right, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Amen.
Welcome everybody, come on in.
Hola, mi nombre es Kofi, ¿cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi, ça va? Ni hao, namaste, osaya anakitawaya, Ohio, I see you, Abarigani, namaste, manut, bakwatav, Barakalat Sham Yahava, Jambo Mimini Kofi, Nina Fra Kukutana Nawewe, Akwaba, Etesen, Anai Kofi, headed the servant of Christ, Mashalam Hey. Hello, everybody. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being a voice of the voices and speaking the unspoken. And I've come before you today to have some great conversation. Thank you for those who are coming from Early Rise of Bible Study session. And we're excited. I think we're going to be all right as far as signal, hopefully. And while we're getting started, hold on one second. I'm gonna disappear on TikTok just for a second. Make sure that our battery is gonna last. Okay, I'm on. Get all this extra stuff that's eating battery life off. Praise Yah. All righty. But welcome to everybody. Welcome on. Welcome on board. Thank you for spending some time with us. We appreciate you. Trying to get TikTok back up and going. Let's see. I don't even know. Okay. Trying to use the Wi-Fi from the hotel. Hopefully it's going to work for us today. Hello, Grand Rising to everybody. Welcome back. For those who are coming from Early Rise of Bible Study session, we appreciate you. How you doing? Once again, we give all honor and praise to the Most High. We give all honor and praise to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that is able to be honored. You can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A and D, the letter N. Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. How's everybody doing? How you doing, MIT Tracy? How you doing, Sister Monica, Miss Hibiscus, Tasha, Sister Mignon, Nicole, everybody, come on in. Thank you so much for spending time with us again. Hopefully it won't be too noisy out here. It is what it is. It is a weekday, so the noise will pick up probably from what it was yesterday. How you doing, Sister Deborah? Today, we're going to talk about something very specific and something that we need to have conversation on. I'm not sure if we'll go our normal amount of time or not, but we'll make sure that we get some stuff in. We got to get ready to have one last meetup down here, then get on the road again. How you doing, Robin? How you doing, Sister Stacy, if I didn't say so already? We're going to talk about prepare the altar. Prepare the altar. How does one prepare an altar? What does that even mean? When we talk about a sacrifice, we don't really think about a sacrifice considering an altar. And if you're going to sacrifice yourself, you should think about the sacrifices, right? Deal with altars. So if I'm going to sacrifice time, how you doing, Sister Patricia, towards anything, I have to figure out like what is the altar that I'm sacrificing on. If you're going to give me time today, right? If you're going to give me some of your time, what is the altar, so to speak, that you're coming on? What should you look in? And watch this. If somebody puts a sacrifice on something, if you're going to sacrifice time, talent, effort, energy, gifts, resources, whatever you're sacrificing, if you're going to sacrifice something you could do for yourself, for your own family, and give it to somebody else, what is the altar that is going on? How you doing, Brother Jermaine? How you doing, MIT Stephen? Real talk, right? If I'm going to give you something, if I'm going to sacrifice something, if I'm going to give a piece of myself towards something, then what is the altar that I'm going to sacrifice it on? Right? There should be a conversation in that, right? Be a living sacrifice. Okay, well, what is the altar that you're going to sacrifice on? Are you sacrificing on things that you're not prepared? Right. See, if there's an altar, if I tell you, build an altar so we can give a sacrifice, how do you do that? What is the context? This is going to be a very cultural, contextual conversation, right? What if I'm going to build an altar? How do you do that? How you doing, Minister Tamara? If I'm going to sacrifice, what is required for the altar? And then, of course, in modern times, when we sacrifice, what is now the altar? Everybody talks about a sacrifice of praise. Well, then what is the altar of praise that's worthy of the sacrifice of praise? Somebody says, I'm going to sacrifice time to pray. Well, what does the altar look like that you pray upon? You see, right? Every sacrifice goes on an altar. Sacrifices don't just get sacrificed randomly. There has to be an altar built. Even when people talk about the whole thing is Abraham and his son Isaac declares that I see the stuff for the altar. I see the stones, I see the wood, I see this, I see that, but I don't see the sacrifice. So he realized that a sacrifice was necessary because he saw the altar. A lot of us think the sacrifice is necessary, but don't have an altar to put the sacrifice on. How you doing, Yahweh's creation? Thanks for being part of the community. Right? A lot of people are talking about putting a sacrifice on something, but you don't have anything to put it on. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense, does it? If we think about it, what if I'm going to put a sacrifice on something? What is the altar? How you doing, Gus Sissy? Like, just that's something that is not common sense; it's kingdom sense, right? If I'm going to put a sacrifice on something, then what is it being put on? If I'm going to sacrifice time today to listen to you, Kofi, what is it based on? And then what I would suggest to many of us today to start looking into is, am I sacrificing my well-being for something that's not altered, or that has been altered? Because first thing I really want to talk about is that if I'm going to build an altar, an altar is supposed to be built up with things that are not made by human hands. I'm not sure if you caught that. I'm going to say it again. A sacrifice, if I'm going to build an altar, first and foremost, how you doing, Black Steel? An altar is supposed to be built by things that are not made by human hand. How you doing, Aswad? Right? What does that mean? That means that I'm not supposed to alter what's on the altar. The altar must be unaltered. Mm. So anything that I'm sacrificing must be unaltered by human hands, right? And anything that I'm putting those things on must be unaltered by human hands. How you doing, Sister Latoya? Are you catching? See, and so what's happened is a lot of us live in the altered reality and are trying to sacrifice to make sure that we can get things through and get things going in an altered reality. No wonder we like virtual reality and don't know what real is. No wonder we have systems created for virtual reality, but we do not know what realism is. How you doing, Simplicity? See, if I'm gonna, once again, an altar should be unaltered. An altar should be what? Unaltered. An altar, if I'm gonna build an altar, it must be built by things that I did not modify or recreate. But what does one do when they're trying to live a eternal, unaltered existence and everything around you is altered? Shalom, how you doing? I don't know if it's Tracy. Please forgive me. Right? What do I do if my whole reality has been altered, but I'm trying to put a sacrifice in it? What does my sacrifice of praise look like when my mindset of praise has been altered? How you doing, Sister Nadine? What does a sacrifice of praise look like when the sacrifice of praise is supposed to be put on an altar that it was never altered? How you doing, Sister Beverly? It was supposed to be put on an altar that was never altered, yet my whole existence is surrounded by things that are nothing but an altered reality. Yeah, we got to go back to natural law, universal law, kingdom law, marital law. See, your mindset of masculinity and femininity, we talked about that in the early rise of Bible study session, has been altered. So I listen to men and women all day, whether they're for us working together, for women only, men only. Women need to be worshipped. Men need to be bowed down to. Men are the protectors. Therefore, women aren't allowed to do this. Women are the ones who give birth. Therefore, men should bow down and kiss their feet. Like all the stuff I hear, it's altered reality. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? I listen to a lot of altered reality. How you doing, Sightseer? Thanks for being part of the community. I keep hearing altered reality, but I don't see anything that people are putting down. In other words, the foundation of your sacrifice is altered. And when your foundation is altered, that means it's got cracks. And if your foundation is cracked, then the whole building's going to come down. Sure, you can sacrifice things that you put in your diet because your diet is just what you eat. Even when you fast, you're dieting off for yourself, right? So your body has become a diet, right, for your body. You're literally eating things off of your body. So that's but what I'm saying is, in general, right? We have not sacrificed, or we keep sacrificing things and based upon things that are altered. How you doing, Sister Knight? So when I prepare an altar, I have to start asking myself, have I prepared a place that's based off of things that are unaltered? If I were to make a true altar, I would look for stones, and I wouldn't carve the stones. I wouldn't put my initials in them. I wouldn't put SOC on them. I wouldn't say, no, if I'm going to create it, we're going to actually probably do this together. We're not going to do a sacrifice, but we'll probably make an altar at some point when we meet together for the Feast of Tabernacles. When we come together and we put together an altar, and we're going to see that you have to look for things that are unaltered, right? And then here's what's going to happen is the sacrifice and then part of the altar is going to end up being consumed, if not totally consumed. The sacrifice has to be totally consumed or burnt up. How you doing, old head energy? It has to be totally consumed, not somewhat consumed. It has to be totally consumed. Yah will totally consume that which is not altered. Why does that have to be totally consumed? Because that means it has to be wholly consumed. If it's holy, then everything burns. If it's not holy, then some of it burns. Right? The sacrifice of praise, is your praise worthy of being wholly consumed? Or is it something that is made by human hands? Okay. So you've come today. How you doing, Coco? You might have come today to sacrifice some of your time to get a word. No matter who you sacrifice your time to get a word from, let me start off by saying this: is that you got to realize that it can't be altered, and this is one of the reasons why you must study to show yourself approved, and then bring it before Elohim that he can see if it should be totally consumed or totally taken in. Right? A lot of people are doing their best when it comes to learning the word of Yah. A lot of our diaspora is getting better, getting there. We're having conversations. We're at least having conversations about who is who, where did we come from, what is the kingdom, what is our language, things like that. And I praise Yah for that. We're seeing a real change. Praise Yah. Those things being said, in seeing a real change in what's going on, we're still dealing with altered issues. How you doing, Queen? Thanks for being on, Queen Sheila. We're still dealing with altered issues. We're trying to present something to Yah that he does not want to totally consume because it's not whole in its appearance or the way that it works, the way that it acts, the way that it moves. It's not holy, right? It's not things that he based. So what I'm saying is this: somebody's coming to learn about the Most High, but the Most High, Elohim, has been altered into God. How you doing, Ratchet? Thanks for being on. So if I'm getting an altered version of Yah, then I can sure put a sacrifice up, I can put a prayer, and it can be somewhat answered, right? But it might not get answered at all, but it definitely will not be answered wholly, because he cannot honor that which is not whole. He can only give, right? Give, and it shall be given unto thee, Elohim's measure. So if I give to him a partial sacrifice, right? Those of you who are on this rise, and you'll get even more what I'm saying when I say this. If I give to him a fraction of what I'm called to be, then I must realize he's going to give me a fraction of what I'm looking for. Or if I only am looking for a fraction of myself, then he's going to reveal a fraction of himself. Or if I'm asking him to reveal me, but I only can give him a fraction of sacrifice, then he's only going to reveal to me a fraction of answer to the prayer. Right? Is it whole? Is it holy? Is it whole? Is it holy? Like these are real conversations. These are real things that we have to actually have. We have to actually talk about. Is it real? Right? How much of it is altered? Once again, some people don't even get it. When I say there's a difference between God and Elohim. God is a Germanic spirit. It's a Germanic deus or deity, if you will. It's a Germanic way of saying I can make whatever I want and worship it. but Elohim is always different. There's only one Elohim. Now, because I got it altered when it was presented to me in English, which has a lot of Germanic language attached to it, because of people that people still look up to, such as Charlemagne, not Charlemagne the God that y'all talk about now, but Charlemagne from back in the times of Germanic rule, and him being a Christian king. Then in your mind, if Charlemagne, right, worship God, then you should worship God. So you have a altered reality, and you're putting your sacrifice on something that's altered. How you doing, Sister Austria? How you doing, Overcomer? How you doing, Darius? How you doing, DB? How you doing, Sister Sage? If I didn't say so already, you have an altered mindset. So here we are trying to sacrifice upon the altar, but the altar has been altered. It's not a whole altar. It's not a holy altar. It's not made in the nature of Yah. So here's somebody preaching to you about God, and never once you can considering that that's not even who you are, who he is, and the title that he's supposed to have. Right here, you are talking about Judeo-Christianity, and not even realize that when the Bible was written, there was no such person as a Christian, and there was no such person as a Jew. How you doing, Sister Cassandra? Praise God. All right. Here you are. You see, here you are talking about these things, and the Bible never declared to you that there was any of these people except for the prism that you look through. And so somebody altered where you're putting your sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time, try to figure out what Judaism is, what Judeo-Christianity is, and in Hebrew language, there's no Christian, right? Matter of fact, we don't even have a well, we could say kara, but we don't even have a letter that sounds like kra, right? We don't have any way of saying kra in Hebrew characters, and when you put Hebrew language together, and here you are saying Jew when there's no letter J in Hebrew language, modern or otherwise, right? Well, denomination is key if Yahashua is the foundation, right? If I have a fraction, then I have a numerator and a denominator, right? The only reason why 1 plus 1 equals 2 is because it's really 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 equals 2 over 1. If I change the denominator, then what I do is I have something that doesn't make sense. I can't say 1 over 2 plus 1 over 4 equals 2 over 1. Right? It has to be 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1 equals 2 over 1. I cannot add a fraction up and give you an answer if the denominator or the denomination is different. Therefore, the denomination or the things that we say denote who we are, they must be something that is actually real, and they are not altered. You see? And so even this thing of denominations has gotten crazy, or even the non-denominational. Look at the bigger the non-denominational gets, they become their own denomination. But it's gotten wild because the altar has been altered. How you doing, Sister Deja? How you doing, Sister Tori? Come on in. Right? How you doing, BUP? Shalom. See, so I agree with you. I'm sorry, it didn't give me your name. What was it? User 222603, etc. Right? So I agree with you that faith is key, but also faith without works. So who are the works attached to in your denominator? See, Yahshua HaMashiach or the Messiah, right? Or even the kingdom of heaven, etc. We should have one thing that is our foundation, our denominator, so that we all add up. But it doesn't add up anymore because there's no denominator. Your altar is messed up. See, your altar is supposed to be unaltered. Once again, the altar is supposed to have is not supposed to have been built by things made by human hands. How you doing, MIT Jelani? Right? The altar is not supposed to be created by a collective of things that have been modified by your hands. The only thing that Yah once sacrificed upon the altar, the only way your sacrifice can even go up. We always talk about the sacrifice, and so what should be sacrificed, but we never talk about the foundation. What should the sacrifice be placed upon? How you doing, Romac? Many of you grew up talking about God, 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 but God is not even an Israelite term, and it's not even an Israelite mindset concerning the Most High. It is somebody else's who has modified who Yah is and told you that it doesn't matter about chosen people. It doesn't matter about royal priesthood. It doesn't matter about holy nations. It doesn't matter about peculiar people. All they've done is they've just told you God, 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 God. Well, what is God? Who is God? Before you said, oh no, it's just a title. They know better. It's not just a title. And we believe that man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that's uttered out of his mouth. Every word, but we don't check every word. So we have these things we're putting sacrifices on, but these are sacrifices really to idols, idolatry, what we've shaped. This is why idols are bad. The idols are what? They basically are what? Idols are basically, in a sense, carved, graven images, right? Well, what is an altar that's been altered by human hands? It is a carved, graven image. So when you make an idol, so when you make an altar to an idol, right, by idolizing the altar itself, we're in really bad shape. Are we not? How you doing, Brother Samson? How you doing, Tamaya? See, we're in really bad shape. How you doing, Keith? Keith Brown. I said Keith Brown because we have multiple Keiths to come on, right? So we're in really bad shape when we have altars that have been altered. We have altars to so many different things and so many different types of altars. Matter of fact, many of you were raised in churches and they would say, come on up to this altar. And what you really meant was come on up to this space or come on up to this stage, but or even come on the stage. And they would say, put your problems on the altar. And so your mindset is, I'll just put my mind. But see, the altar has to be unaltered. Come up here, pray. Let's put it on the altar. Okay, well, are you putting it on something that's not altered? He said, that's true. That's what we're taught in church. Yeah, God, right? And so here I am putting all this stuff on the altar, but the altar is not right. As a matter of fact, it might be right in that context or in that congregation, but it's not righteous. And I don't want to be right anymore. I'd rather be righteous. Let somebody win the argument over what it is. But hear what I'm saying. I'd rather be righteous than right. I'd rather be unaltered than somebody say, well, I agree with your altering of the point. How you doing, Prince? See, and it becomes difficult for you to be around people because people don't like it when you keep going back to the original. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. We haven't said this in a while on here, right? We say this quite often. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but what do we wrestle against? Against principalities. What is a principality? It is an origin. It's considered to be a kingdom, and therefore it can be considered to be kingdom origins. We're wrestling against the fact that in your mind, you think that it is okay to have altered things be your foundation for your sacrifice. Your sacrifice is altered if it's put upon the altered. We need our altar to be unaltered. Sure, it can be a thought process, a mindset. Guess what? That's origin, right? What is the original mind? Even the word soul in the Greek, even if we want to go there, the word soul, which is nachavash in Avda or Hebrew, but in the Greek, it would be what? It would be psyche or psyche. Psyche. So the psyche, the psychology, the study of the psyche. But guess what psyche means? Once again, psyche, Psyche, it means soul. So when somebody's giving you psychology, they're telling you about the logic of or the study of the soul. If you go to a psychologist, IST means somebody should be proficient at it, right? A pianist, a humanist, a flautist, a tubist, etc. Right? So if an evangelist, right, a protagonist, you must be proficient in whatever is coming before it. So therefore, if somebody is a psychologist, they are somebody who's supposed to be IST proficient, ology at the study of psyche, the soul. How you doing, King God? But a lot of people are not proficient at the study of the soul. How you doing, Island Boy? Yeah, minister tried to tell you you're a devil before when you were younger. Amen. Right. But that's when we were listening to people who were, oh, you fine, Sister Tori. Thanks for being on. And how you doing, Dwayne? So that's why we have to stop listening to people who are what? Who are into a certain psyche or a certain soul or a certain mindset or a certain place where that harbors, that's supposed to attach the spirit to the flesh. Your psyche is ate up, right? Your soul is ate up. You're having these terms that are being brought to you, but your psyche, your soul is altered. Some people have sold their soul, and we listen to them as if we should try to comprehend and pay attention to their psyche. right? You sold out to sell 1,000,000 records, so everybody will be at your concert, and so you're doing this and doing that. And I watch you, and you're literally dressed like the devil. I watch you, and you're doing flips off of stuff and running around like you're possessed. And people say you have great energy and this and that or whatever. Of course, this Monica, you can always ask a question, right? You have great energy, you have this, you have that, and all that. And nobody's talking about that you're altered. How you doing, Sister Nadine? You were altered. You're not even a version of yourself. How can you make sacrifices to become a better version of yourself and you don't have an altar? That's correct. Your altar is unaltered. I'm sorry, right? Or your altar should be unaltered. How you doing, Sister Greta? See, so we have a lot of stuff that's going on. How you doing, Coach Lattimore? If you're still on, you have a very altered sense of reality. You have a very altered sense. How you doing, Jose? Thanks for being on as well. New Mutant, if you're still on. MIT Jenny, if you're still on. Everybody, anthropomorphic. I think I talked to you, but didn't say hello. How you doing, son? If you're still on, SUN, right? There's a you might be laying down and sacrificing time, talent, effort, energy, gifts, finances, and stuff on an altered version of reality. Somebody will be like, well, give me a practical example. Or I'm sorry, you said, when you were a child, did I feel my soul as you did that was pushed on you was wrong? To a certain degree, yes. I was very faithful as a Jehovah's Witness. 4 years old, I was out with the elders and the brothers, and and a lot of this stuff still helped me as a child, and it helps me as an adult, right? So I'm not gonna say just because it was all wrong, but at 4 years old, I was out with the elders, going door to door. 6 years old, I was preaching. But about 12, 13, really before then, but especially by 12, 13, I started realizing that people that were in the faith didn't even live by what they live in. Now certain people, certain brothers of them, they say they want to live it and they come at me wrong, but I remember what it was to watch them for years, not live what they said that they lived. And so for me, yeah, my mother allowed me to be able to go out and leave that, and it led me to where I am today, right? But but I realized that, especially when I started asking questions, that's really what gets people upset. And the reason why people don't like you to ask questions, beloved, is because they don't want you to call them out for things they've altered. You said you can't stand disfellowshipping. Yeah. I don't even know if I guess I've been disfellowshipped. I didn't stick around long enough to find out. I probably am, right? Especially as I've been talking now, because and people don't think about it. Once again, though, this is not a family group. People don't think about it, even in churches or even in some mosques. Unfortunately, the mosque actually do a better job of this than a lot of the churches do. But nevertheless, a lot of people don't think about being a family, coming together. How you doing, Sunni? Thanks for being on, right? And so your dad's an elder. Okay, praise y'all. Right. So we have this issue. How you doing, Bacchus? I don't know if I'm saying Almitere. I don't know if that's even correct at all. But thanks for being on. Alamitri. I'm not sure how you would pronounce it. I don't know if it's Almitere Bacchus, but however it is pronounced. Thank you so much for being on. Appreciate it. Thanks for being on, Sister Bullock. Everybody who's on, thank you for coming on all the platforms. How you doing, Sister Juanetta? Right? Okay, cool. So these things have been altered, and I keep putting sacrifices on things that have been altered rather than an altar that should not be built by anything made by human hands. So, once again, my concept of God is based off of something that's altered because it's not God, it's Elohim. My concept of Jesus is altered because it's not half man, half Zeus, Jesus, or Jesus, or Jesus, or Yesu. It is what? It is Yehoshua, or Yeshua, or Yahushua, or Yahavashai, etc. Right? Or right? My mindset of the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost has been altered because it's Levach Hakodash, or some of you say Ruach Hakodash, right? But my mindset has been altered. How you doing, Sister Sherry? Because I'm putting, and if my mindset has been altered, then where does my prayer go? And my prayer is going to be put upon the altar, or if these things are going to be put on the altar, or if my fears are going to be put on the altar, but I have an altered sense of reality, right? I have an altered sense of reality. This is why people don't like to talk about race. It's not just that, oh, you guys are trying to start a thing. I told you before, I'm not looking for any other culture or any other nation to give my people what they deserve, because it's not your responsibility at the end of the day. I'm like the 4 black pastors that were former slaves that talked to General Sherman that got reparations in the first place. Hey, we just want some land, right? We just like some land, the ability to teach ourselves and make sure we do what we're supposed to do. And if we can have that not be altered by your sensibilities, we would be very grateful for that. We don't need segregation, but we do need some separation to at least love ourselves a little bit first. And then we can be in a responsibility where we can look you eye to eye, because you're asking for us to love you and we don't even love ourselves yet. And thank you for your likes, by the way. The likes, so especially if you're on, and the gifts, especially if you're on YouTube, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification tab so you can know when the next video is coming up. We appreciate you so much. But people keep looking for things that are altered. And so people are looking for the construct and not the interpretation. So see, when it comes to race, I don't mind talking about it, but see, you have an altered conversation when it comes to race. You think that I'm looking for, because a lot of our people do, unfortunately. How you doing, Yahuda Ben Yasser? A lot of our people are looking for things that are altered. So a lot of people are going, hey man, teach my child. Make sure you teach critical race theory. Make sure you make my child feel comfortable in school. That's your school. It's not supposed to be for me. Right? How you doing, Hidden? Right? Your school is not built for me or my people. And I'm totally okay with that. Somebody says, how are you okay with that? I'm totally fine, because it's not my culture. How you doing, Love 20336? I'm totally okay with you teaching something else, right? That's not about me, because that's not for me. The school system is not for me. But see, people are sacrificing so much and saying we got to vote for the next person. And we have to make sure Yah's going to be pleased with what we do to the school system. Yah is not okay with the school system. He did not sign up for the school system. He did not send his son to be sacrificed that your child would have a better chance of getting a degree in a demonic school system that only trains them to make more money for the elite anyways, and doesn't even teach the child that money is not even real. So you have a lot of people with doctorates who still don't own land. You have a lot of adjunct professors that are on a lot of our people that are adjunct professors and yet are on food stamps. You have a lot of people who are doing their best to make sure that they're doing, but Yah is not worried about us changing the system from the inside. Am I saying that we don't have people that are teachers and therefore they shouldn't teach? No, right? But what I am telling you is it's not his concern to make sure that people are teaching you in a system that's anti-you. And definitely, if you're trying to be attached to him, then if it's anti-him, then he's not. Then it's, why would he be concerned with that? Yeah, the unschooling, the unlearning, the learned, and all that stuff. Yeah. How you doing, sister? Was it Sister Everett Knight? I think came on. Or no, not sister. Sorry, Everett Knight came on. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Let me get my stuff together. All right, still a little tired, but I'm getting better. Yeah, it's not our culture. How you doing, Sister Wendy? It's not. It's not something that's built for us. But we're trying to take something that's altered. We're not supposed to sacrifice on things that are altered. We must now prepare the altar. See, this is the problems going on as we have altered things so much and we get so used to doing things. We need to tear down the altars, right? The Bible even talks about this, tearing down altars that are on mountains that are too high. That means that we've put things higher in high places that should have never been there. So when it says stuff like wickedness in high places, how you doing, Angelique? When it says stuff like wickedness in high places, how you doing, Michelle? It's saying that we have put things so high up and we've made altars and we've made the things and we've carved them up and put them in places they don't belong. We need to tear down those altars and we need to start preparing the altars the way they were supposed to be. First of all, you already missed it. How you doing, Adam? That's how we start usually with humanity, right? It's actually greeting one another. Secondly, you missed it. I don't worship God. That's an altered sense of reality. God is not the same as Elohim, just like God's not the same as Erija, or God is not going to be the same as Netju, or the same as Onyon Capone, or the same as Anansi, et cetera, right? You are talking about God, right? as far as somebody else's culture, and that's fine. You have every right to think about it through somebody else's lens. But in my culture, I'm okay with making Elohim who he's supposed to be, and not trying to figure out who a Germanic deity is, or who your God of your nation is, or your oaths that you make to God, because that's what an oath is legally. It's a promise before God. So anybody who's made an oath, you made a promise before God or a promise before a deity, both of which I don't serve. You see? So people are trying to get you to argue things and put these sacrifices on altars that are not ours. Right? When they say God bless America, that's talking about Washington, D.C. You don't even know how law works. There's an oath that they have to make every single time. And somebody says you're crazy for saying that, but you don't even know what Washington, D.C. means. You don't know what the obelisk means. You don't know what Columbia is. You don't know the story of Osiris and Isis. And everything that comes out of Iris is Heru, which is where you get your eye of horrors from that you love so much. You never broke it down. You never studied it. Why? Because you have an altered sense of reality. But instead of going by the altered reality, let's bring things back to their natural form and base our sacrifices, even the sacrifice of our time, or to have conversation, or to learn. How you doing, Sister Helen? Let's do these things based off of what? Reality. You see, let's start there. Shalom, Koba, how you doing? Right? And you just mentioned Gil Scott. Let's say something else that Gil Scott said. You ready for this? Gil Scott told you this is one of his most famous, if not his most famous poem. The revolution will not be televised. You have an altered sense of reality. If everybody doesn't see it and everybody doesn't agree with it, then it must not be of Yah. But what Yah's about to do is not going to be something that's about to show up in your TV subscription. The truths are not the things that are going to be popped up. Netflix, we talked about this yesterday. The guy who started, or at least is I think he's the person who started Netflix, is the nephew of the person, and he himself, Netflix, if you don't know that Netflix is propaganda, it is, but he's the nephew of the person who started propaganda for things like breakfast. People in the United States of America and all over the world didn't worry about breakfast as a meal. That wasn't a regular thing. You wake up and you have to eat breakfast. Right? How you doing, Brother Vincent? That wasn't a regular thing. How you doing, Sister Irene? And nobody thought about that regularly. You got to eat breakfast. You know why that is? That you think that is that the uncle of the person who created Netflix, he was a great propaganda artist, and they said, "Hey, we're having problems selling bacon and these juices and things like that in cereals." He said, "No problem. I got you. We'll start putting them, in commercials and next to cartoons, and we'll start putting them even in movies when they play and stuff." Before the movie start or in between, right? And we'll have the food that even dances and stuff like that. That's where they got the ideas from and stuff like that. When you used to watch the movies, let's go out to the movies, let's go out to the movie, all that stuff. He said we'll come up with some ideas like that, and we'll start bombarding people, and then we'll start putting the food pyramid together, and then we'll start putting it at the school. So everywhere these children look, right? And then it got to the 90s and stuff. You started watching your Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s and the 90s, and then every cartoon where you saw all this wild, flagrantly wicked stuff, and then in between, after these messages, we'll be right back, and then we'll go ahead and show them sugar and all this stuff that's going to really cause them to have diabetes and all these things. But they'll keep looking for stuff. They'll eat extra meals and everything because we told them this is what's necessary for them. When the reality is that even if you watch cartoons, you still went outside. You didn't start your day with a cartoon. You woke up and somebody was like, go outside somewhere. And you just kept running around all day. And if you came back too early, you would have to stay inside. You were afraid, right? In the America, and I won't say all the Americas, but in the United States of America, and I think Canada and stuff like that, they tell you go outside and just go play somewhere. And they get mad at you. Why you keep coming back here? You want to stay in here? And that was a curse. Please don't make me stay in the house. Right? Oh no, I'm sorry. I won't come back. I just wanted some water, boy. If you come back in one more time, you staying inside. And then you didn't want to stay inside. So you say you didn't know what you were gonna do. You didn't know what you were gonna eat, whatever, but you knew you was gonna be outside. And then what was the sign you needed to go back to the house? Up porch light, that street light, something about to happen. People would freak out if they saw the street light come up. You didn't even have a watch, but you knew you had an internal clock because you were so much into nature. You already knew. You started looking at the street light before it hit, and you were like, "Man, I got to go home." Right? You were so used, even in being embalmed by all this foolishness, you still had a lot of natural stuff in you. So we taking it way back. Yeah, but that's real, right? It was a natural way. It was an unaltered sense about you. Even when I would play video games, and I could play video games 12 hours straight. But even in doing that, there was a natural way of doing things, right? There's a natural way, right? You didn't just play video games just because. And if I got to a funk where I did it like 2-3 days in a row, my father might come in and say, "Boy, go somewhere. Hey, put him in summer camp. Hey, he gonna have to go on a trip. Hey, let's go down to the Carolinas. Yo, let's go do this. Let's go. We're gonna do something because they're not gonna get in a place to where they think that all they do is sit down and play games all day." Yeah, you said yes. We as children had to be treated. Oh, okay, yeah. Bodily harm to come home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we had certain things that were mandatory, right? We had stuff that was mandatory that you had to do, including going outside. Hey, how you doing, Minister Shante? That was a safe trauma response to sundown towns. Well, that too, yeah. But you had the sundown town, and so the street light was something that you needed to do because the street light came on before the sun went down. Very true. Very true. We don't even think about that a lot. Very true. Right? So these are the things I'm just saying. Like there was a natural response, but things have been altered now. So sometimes your child just doesn't go outside anymore. Now your child gets to be a teenager, they go out, but there is no be back before the street lights out because who does that anymore, right? They took that away. Now your child, every child at 5, 6 years old has to have a cell phone. I was a grown man for a couple years before I finally said, you know what, if I'm going to be out here, maybe I should have a cell phone to keep in contact with somebody. It was weird. It wasn't until, and I'm not trying to say that black people didn't do this at all because I know we did too. I was just saying, and I use the term black and white loosely, right? To help you to comprehend where we are, these constructs that we live by. But in the black neighborhood, I didn't really know nobody that had a cell phone. It wasn't until we got to like middle school, 8th grade, and high school where you started seeing people that actually had cell phones. You were like, "Oh, y'all have cell phones?" There was other people. It wasn't us. Like in our neighborhood, who needed to call you anyways? If somebody had a two-way, they was probably involved in a lifestyle like that where I came from. I'm not saying this is normal. I'm just telling you this is what it was for me. So it was really weird when I was seeing people. Yeah, I saw people with the two-way. I saw some of the high school students, but they was always, if you had the two-way, I usually assume, and it was an assumption, but I usually would assume, oh, okay, he had some stuff. you know, I would call my father's beeper. He didn't have a cell phone, but he had the beeper before he had the two-way, right? But he had the beeper, right? And so I would make sure I would beep him, and I would have to give him either a number I see it's so long I don't even remember what they call payphone, right? I had to give him the number of the payphone I was at, or I had to give him beep him and like give him some information as far as what was going on, or if he needed to do something, or who he needed to call, right? But that was how you got stuff, and so there was more. How you doing, Sister Toya? There were more things like that. You said you didn't have a cell phone until you were in college. Yeah, I didn't go to college, so until I got in the military, and even the first year and a half, I joined at 17. So until like I was about 19 years old, I don't think I had a cell phone. It was only because they started saying, "Yo, Kofi trying to reach you at your barracks or this and that. It's not fast enough for us or strong enough. We need you to do something. We need you to do it right away." So I ended up getting the cell phone for the first time. Right. Right. And mine was a Nokia, that I got as well, I think. Right. I don't remember what company, probably Sprint or AT&T, probably was AT&T, because AT&T and I, we don't have a friendly relationship. So I think it's because that was the first cell phone company. They jacked me up. But what I'm trying to say is that we have all this stuff that's there, and we don't realize how altered things have become. That's what I'm really trying to get us to. How you doing, Sister Jen? That's what I'm really trying to get us to, is that we have this very altered mindset where stuff has changed. My little brother, who was 12 and a half years, 13 years, my junior, he went to the same high school that I went to, and the whole thing was a really jacked up experience for him when he would tell me things that he was going through. And I was like, man, that much happened in 12 years. It looked better than what it was. We were the type of high school where everybody went to the back, and a lot of us, we were in the trailers. And then when I went to see him and stuff, and when I went to see it even after he graduated, I was like, wow, they got like, it looks like a movie theater and the auditorium now. And this, and I remember, the seats was falling apart, right? But they got like a whole field with all this other stuff, and the field was jacked up. Nobody wanted to play football on the field. We were embarrassed to have schools come and play football against our teams, right? And have marching band competitions there and all that stuff. It was embarrassing. We had to spray it down ourselves. We didn't have anybody that could spray. We had to learn how to spray the football field ourselves, right? Had to get great at math and angles and geometry and everything just to create the football field. And I had to figure out how to put grass in the football field the right way. All these different things. Like, we didn't have those things, but I went back and saw it. But the wickedness, he told me, while it looked great on the outside, the wickedness that he would tell me about on the inside, the children that were having sex in the hallways and stuff like that, and children would create these spaces to where nobody could see, so the teachers wouldn't know what's going on. They just think a bunch of children were kind of chilling out in between their classes, and come to find out children were actually having sex in the middle of that stuff. I mean, the wickedness that was popping up was crazy. Oh yeah, you said with that, yeah, if somebody had to come looking for you, that was a problem. Yes, sir. Right. But I'm trying to say all these things, that we have been sacrificing things on the altar reality. Do you not know that your children don't go through the same thing you go through? That you went through, they go through worse. And that's why you don't want to take them outside. This is why you need community. This is why you need a community. This is why you need people that are like-minded. This is why you need people that are willing to go to the next level. This is why you need people that are willing to go back to the origin when building the altar, so our sacrifice can be worthy of praise. We must prepare the altar. Are you ready to prepare the altar? See, because until you prepare the altar, your sacrifices can only be sensed as much as they are righteous. See, when we say, may this be a sweet smelling savor, it's not sweet smelling if it's not based on the right altar. Because Yah's not smelling with human nostrils, right? The silica in his nose is not a human silica. It's not activated the same. He's looking for some very specific things to be built up first. And so before we keep talking about sacrifice this and sacrifice your time, we've got to also make sure that what we're sacrificing on is not altered. I'd rather it take 500 years for something to change, but it be unaltered, than to have something happen in 5 days, but it's going to be altered every time. And that's what happens to your community. That's why you're African American today, and you was black before that, and you were Afro American, kind of, sort of, for some ramblings, but nobody really used it. And then you were Negro, and then you were this, and then you were a slave, and then you were property, and then you were freedman, but then you were this, and then you were that. And you don't even know what your branch is, what they now call tribes are. You said change your mind state, sacrifice harmful mentalities, not a goal at the end, harmless intentions first. Well, yeah, right. And so what are we building this stuff on? See, we're sacrificing so much and getting so little, and we're not thinking about, could we be getting little because the sacrifice. Watch this. Elijah rains down fire from heaven at one point, right? Everybody's pretty familiar with that story. If you're not, Elijah was dealing with some wickedness, and the people that were anti the Most High. Elijah says, "Okay, I'll make a bet with y'all, so to speak." Right? And remember what I said, in our culture, at least when you hear me say, I've told you this before, when you hear me say bet, I'm telling you I know what it is. So if Pastor Kofi says, I bet you probably don't want to take it, because I don't bet. So if I say I bet you something, I'm telling you literally, like, you're not gonna. It's something I'm 100% right. Not because I'm 100% right, because I have the 100% information. And so basically, Elijah kind of hits him with that, like, bet. Like, y'all think that Yah's will, that Yahweh is not the greatest. He said, okay, let's have a competition. He said, you go ahead, you put up your altars, you do this, you do that, boo boo. He said, I'm gonna put up my altar. He said, y'all can have hundreds of y'all doing all this stuff or whatever. You sacrifice and you go first, and y'all wail out to your spirits, to your gods, and all that stuff. He said, and then I'm gonna call on Elohim, and we'll see what happens. He said, how do you prepare the altar for the family? Well, so thank you for the question. We're kind of answering that right now, but I'll try to see if we can be more family oriented with some of the answers as well. So just give me a second, and thank you for the question, Cassie. Appreciate it. So we'll try to we'll see if we can kind of shift a little bit in that direction. It's going to naturally do so already because we're already kind of talking about it, right? Setting this altar and making sure certain things are unaltered. And we had actually had a conversation before our early rise of Bible study session that I actually did post publicly. We don't normally post our um, early rise and stuff publicly. If you want the links, we can give it to people. But people who wake up early, they kind of get a reward. Those who are Patreon, we put it on there for them as well. But we did actually allow people to kind of catch this. If you want to look in that on our YouTube channel, you can. It's posted. Then that'll probably answer some of your questions. However, and how you doing, Jesse? However, Elijah lets them go first, and what happens? Right? They're doing all this stuff. They're saying all these chants. They're beating on their chest, and he's like, man, um, maybe he even says like maybe your deity, maybe your spirit that you're praying to, maybe he's asleep. He starts messing with him, like he's being outright disrespectful. Like maybe they sleep, man. I don't know. Just keep on going. Then he goes before Elohim, and it says that he had the sacrifice. The altar had the kindling and the wood and the stones, and he had dug around the area and even put water around it because you had to make sure that you weren't going to have the fire go to where it couldn't be extinguished and all those things. And guess what happened? It said that his sacrifice was immediately hit and the whole thing was consumed, and it says it even licked up the water. Because your sacrifice, if Yah is pleased with it, it will not just only take the sacrifice, it will take up the altar. You see? So the altar must be worthy of sacrifice. Because if I'm going to burn, anything attached to what's being burned is going to get burned, correct? Did you catch that? See, we don't recognize culture when we see these things. So anything that I attach to a sacrifice will be burned, right? Anything I attach to a sacrifice, it will be burned. When we do Passover, we're technically supposed to make sure that everything is consumed. So if you do Passover meal and there's parts of the Passover meal that are not consumed by humans, guess what's supposed to be done? It's supposed to be taken somewhere and burned up. You see what I'm saying? And we don't think about the altar. We're so quick to focus on sacrifice this, sacrifice this, sacrifice this. But if the altar's not right, then it's not going to be worthy of sacrifice either. Because how is the altar supposed to be built? On things that are not made by human hands. If I've modified, I can go gather the stones and put them in place. I can gather the wood and the kindling and put it in place. But I'm not supposed to modify the stones. I'm not supposed to carve the stones. And we're so used to going. This is why people build buildings before they build relationships. Thank you, Alan Boy. Appreciate that. You hear what I'm saying? This is why people will build a building, the edifice, the carving, before they worry about the family. How you doing, Brother Keith? This is why people will build monuments before they'll make sure that people are worthy of loving one another. This is why people will try to build homes for families, but get divorces before the homes are paid off. And now here you are trying to figure out legally who's going to get this much of the house because you were more concerned about what was created by human hands than you were about what was supposed to last eternally. Mm-hmm. See, before you get married, and in our culture, sex is marriage, marriage is sex, and technically in the West it is as well, because if you don't consummate your marriage, it doesn't count anyways, right? You guys know that by law, right? That if you get together and you walk down the aisle, you go to the courthouse, whatever, you marry, but you never consummate it, you go before the judge, you say they won't have sex with me, the judge says it doesn't count because they can't keep you in something that two people never became one in. So it just is a no, doesn't count. Right? That's real, right? So, but many of you will we'll deal with the sex. That feels great. That feels great, right? But your children that come out of the sex never had anything that was going to last. Here you are talking about being a living sacrifice. What is the altar that you stand on as a living sacrifice? How you doing, Sister Melissa? What is the altar that you stand on as a living sacrifice? When you say, I'm going to sacrifice myself for my husband, I'm going to sacrifice myself for my wife, what is the altar you stand on? What does that look like? How should it be built? And how has it been modified by human hands to the point to where now you're doing all types of stuff that wasn't built for you to stand upon. See, the three Hebrew boys were thrown into a fire, but they didn't burn. It says even when they were thrown into a fire, they didn't even look like they had been burnt. They didn't even smell like it said they had been burnt. And when they came out of the fire, they came out with somebody who even looked like the son of Elacham. How you doing, Brother Henry? Thanks for being part of the community, Angela Ford. Right? It said that they came out, they didn't even look like what they've been thrown into. Because why? Because they had something, they had an altar, even if it wasn't a physical altar in that moment, that even when they were sacrificed, Yah completely protected them. You said, can actions and lifestyle choices become an altar? It depends on the context. That's a great question. I would say it depends on the context. It depends on the context. If you are, so when we say altar, I guess maybe we should give a working definition for it, right? When I'm talking about an altar, let's just say it like this for today's purposes. When I'm using the term altar, I'm talking about a foundation that what you're sacrificing is put upon. A foundation of what you're sacrificing is put upon. In other words, if I'm going to give time towards something and sacrifice my time, what is the altar? If I'm going to pray to Yah, what is the altar? First John, James chapter 1, verses 5-8. Everybody always reads verse 8. A double-minded man is unstable in all their ways. But if you read the verses 5-8, you'll discover it's talking about prayer. And it says that many people pray for things that they're not worthy of asking for because they don't even live righteously the way that the one they're praying to, that they're asking for permission for it to happen. They don't even live in accordance to what they're praying for. Therefore, they have no attachment with Yah. And so you're praying to Yah for things, but you're not going to get what you're praying for because it's not attached. Therefore, since it is not attached now, your prayers go no higher than the ceiling, or they go no higher than my hand right now. That's all they're going to go. They're not going to touch the heavens. Even if you're trying to pray and commune with the ones in the heavens, you're not in a position to actually commune with that person. Therefore, since you're really not in connection with him because of your actions, you can't get what you prayed for. And therefore, if you're unstable in that, then you're not going to be able to get what you asked for. And guess what? If you're double-minded in prayer, then you're double-minded in all your ways, right? If you would go to the Most High and ask him for something, and you're asking him, you're putting a sacrifice of prayer up, so to speak, but you don't have any foundation underneath what you're praying for, then the Most High is not required to answer your prayer. Even if he hears it, he's not required to pray to answer it in any way, shape, or form, because what is prayer? Prayer is a petition. What is a petition? A petition is a request or a demand made upon a government based off of your constitutional rights. So if I'm praying for something, but I don't live what I'm praying for, then what's the point of praying for it? That's faith and works coming together. People have faith, but that's when you have no. So in that sense, works would be your altar, and faith would be your sacrifice, right? But you have faith, sacrifice. I have faith. I'm gonna stand out. I'm gonna tell everybody all day, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. But you have no works, and so here you are in faith, praying for something, putting a sacrifice out, and y'all's like, but that's altered, and that's altered, and I didn't ask you to live like that, and that's not my name, and this is not how we operate, and this is how you should love one another, and you're asking me to help you with your children, but you dishonor your parents, and he's just like, I can't deal with this. That's what that scripture is actually talking about. Yeah, praying in vain. And how you doing, Slaus? Right? Shalom. See, these are things that we're talking about. And so in that sense, yeah, we could say become what you want, or at least become somebody worthy of what you want. And people just go, well, I'm worthy. Are you really? Because your worth, right, is attached to what's worthy of you then. So I'm worth somebody being my husband. All right. Are you worthy of a husband then? No, I'm worth a husband. Are you worthy of a husband? I bring worth as a wife to my husband. Well, are you worthy of a husband then? What is a husband? I bring worth to the wife, right? So I'm right. Well, are you worthy of a wife? See, you're making a sacrifice of talking about I want to become a husband, but are you worthy of a wife? Are you foundational enough to comprehend what that comes with? what she comes with. When I say that, I don't want to be disrespectful, right? Are you found? Do you have some foundation? Do you have some stuff in you? I'm worthy of people listening to everything that I have to say. You better come out and listen to everything I have to say. You already sounded kind of weird. You sounded kind of sus. And how you're having this conversation, you know why you're sounding kind of sus? You sound a little sus. You sound a little odd. You sound a little weird. Why am I saying that? Because I am listening to me. Listen, it's not about you. And how you doing, Brother Ali, if I didn't say this already? It's not about you. Yes, sure. Give some people some stuff that's happened in your life. Sure. Hold yourself accountable. Sure. Be in front of people, but you don't sound like somebody that's worth listening to because you don't sound like somebody who's worthy. Watch this. I talked about being unaltered. Whenever I listen to somebody teach or preach, I never come from a mindset of this person is going to be giving me everything from scratch. I'm not saying it's not possible that they could be. I don't want to sound like I'm not humble in this aspect. Hear what I'm saying though. If I listen to you preach a word, and the Messiah says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 20 on the Sermon on the Mount, he tells us that you should know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. There's not a scribe or Pharisee that I need to teach me how law works. Now, because I know how law works. So I'm not listening to you to tell me how law works. I'm listening to you to show me how to make sure that this thing that I know how it works, how to be able to use it more properly, and how to help me to fine tune it. I didn't come for you to tell me everything from scratch. I was a babe. But at some point, I had to stop being on the sincere milk and start eating some meat. So I don't need you to go ahead and tell me how the steak is cut, right? Or this and that or whatever. Right, but I might need you to tell me, hey, how do you cook the steak a little better? Or what's the difference between, this or that? What's the difference between the braid or the difference between the cube or the difference between, see, you can help me with that stuff, but I don't need you to tell me that this is what meat is. And that sounds weird to some. I know I'm talking culturally a little bit in that, especially if you're not into your word like that. But I'm not coming to you for you to tell. See, watch this. I know that the word. Thank you, Holy Spirit. She brought it to me like this earlier, and I'm being disobedient. Watch this. Let me get back on track. I know what I'm called to be. Right? I know my calling. There have been people who've argued it with me, whatever. Even people who've been spiritual parents. I don't need you to tell me what I'm called to be. How you doing, Brother Allen? Be safe out there. I don't need you to tell me what I'm called to be. What I need you to do, right, is show me where I'm headed or help me down the road I'm headed. I know my calling. So when somebody comes to me and tells me to sacrifice something that Yah has called me to be, we don't even do that, right? Because you're not going to alter what's already there. I already know in the altar what I'm called to be. My sacrifice I don't need to put myself on the altar. Right? If anything, even if it looks like I'm gonna sacrifice myself, help me to find the ram in the bush. I don't need you to tell me throw more of myself on there, give up more of myself, give up more of my time. And no. Like I already have that stuff that's built into the altar already. I'm sacrificing something. See, what is a sacrifice for? Let's make this, instead of making it so mystical, let's bring it down to the practical level. What is a sacrifice for? It is to cover, right? To cover my sins. Right? To make sure that I still have the ability to commune with Yah on some level. I can't talk to Yah because I have these sins in place. And so before it gets to a place where I block the ability to talk to him at all, let me use the sacrifice to cover what's going on. How you doing, Renaissance? That's what we're really talking about, right? Let me use this to cover what's going on. And so I'm not coming to you, right, as far as sacrifice, I'm not coming to you to teach me something. I'm teach me something that has to do with what's already set as far as my calling and this and that. I know what's unaltered. I don't need you to alter who I'm called to be, who I'm created to be, who I'm this and that. I don't need you to alter who I am. I don't need you to alter the word of Yah so that you'll be able to get this. I know my word. It's you can't alter it. People get upset with me. Well, this is what this is, and this is what faith is, and God told me that blah blah. Look, I don't need you. I talk to Yah just like you talk to Yah. I get all that stuff. I came here today because I'm asking you to help me with the sacrifice. The sacrifice I'm doing in obedience with his word. I've already got it laid out, but I need you to help with the sacrifice. What does a priest do? The priest comes and helps you with the sacrifice. What is the priest supposed to do? The priest is supposed to make sure the sacrifice, first of all, is clean. Right? And I'm not sure what you were saying, just to clarify. No harm Oh, just to clarify. Yeah. Okay. Right. So the priest is there to make sure first and foremost that the sacrifice is clean. The word clean means lawful, right? So even though I might not be the priest that's putting the sacrifice down, I still know what's lawful. I'm waiting for the priest to at least bare minimum dip his hands in the bowl. Clean your hands up. Get lawful. Get legal first. Be in a position to where this can be heard. I need you to be lawful because I'm lawful, and I need you to be lawful. I can't be under anybody that's not lawful. Right? Even that word sound doctrine, they try to slip that in there. That word sound comes from a Greek word called hygienikos. Hygienikos is talking about being hygienic. So even in sound doctrine, they're talking about clean doctrine. Wash your hands first. Why is it that you are somebody who is you are ordained, but in order to be in line with an ordinance, you must be lawful. Somebody ordained can marry you to somebody according to state law, right? However, to be ordained, married by state law, guess what that means? To be ordained by state law, guess what that means? That means that you still have to be lawfully allowed to marry somebody. All these people ordained, and all of them against the law. And they would be the first people to tell you, make sure you got your driver's license in order. But they'll tell you that they're going to marry you as an ordained minister or an ordained elder or an ordained reverend or an ordained pastor or an ordained apostle or ordained evangelist, whatever. And yet they would tell you that they are against the law. How you doing, Charles? How are you going to be against the law, but you're ordained by the law? That's double-mindedness, you see? So first things first, when you're going to tell me about the sacrifice, and that includes with my family or anything, before, as a husband, I've got to make sure my family is taken care of. And so if I'm coming to you as a pastor, I'm coming to you as a kohelet, I'm coming to you as a rabbi, I'm coming to you as whatever you want to call yourself, an imam, whatever. First things first, this is what I need as a father. I need for you to make sure that you're telling me what it is, to make sure that first of all, and I'm gonna hold you accountable because I need you to be clean. I need you to be lawful. Keep it a buck with me. Don't give me no dirty muck stuff. Look, I might have come out the mud. I might have made it out the mud. I might have made it out the muck, but I'm not just going to stay there. I might have been in the pig pen, but I came to myself and I got cleaned up, and I've had the ring put back on my finger. I've had the robe put back on me. They've taken care of the fatted calf and sacrificed it that we might be able to eat of the fatted calf. They had saved that just for me. I've already gone through that stuff, so don't treat me like I'm a commoner. Treat me like I'm a king. You see, but people have altered what's going on. So people who are trying to sacrifice to become better, they're getting an altered message. So you got to clean yourself first. If I go to the priest for a sacrifice, I need that priest to clean. You got to wash your hands, bro. If you got to wash your hands, if your children have to wash their hands before they eat, if you need to wash your hands before you feed somebody, your priest needs to wash their hands before they feed you. How you doing, Austin? How you doing, off grid? And we're going to a lot of priests, so-called preachers, so-called shepherds. And the shepherds are walking around with unclean hands. Read Ezekiel 34. Don't forget, Ezekiel 34 tells you that these shepherds are not following the will of Yah, and therefore he's going to take these shepherds away because they're sitting up there and they're eating off the sheep, and the sheep are not being fed at all. And how you doing, babe? My wife is on the Honorable Maya. Please check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. Praise y'all. Thank you for being on, babe. Love you very much. So we have to recognize what's going on. Those with clean hands. Clean your hands up. Clean your act up. Clean your ways up, bro. People are depending on us. Sis, if you're going to preach this word, clean your hands up. Right? You can't even go to the space where the altar was. And that altar that I'm talking about now, at this point, we're talking about even when you have the tabernacle. The tabernacle to where, and we're talking about especially if we're going back to the place where it was only one priest that was allowed to go back there one time a year. And he was going to make a sacrifice on behalf of all of Israel. And if that sacrifice wasn't worthy enough, he wasn't going to make it out. They had a chain around his ankle. And if Israel was acting up that year, Then they had to take the chain and they had to drag him out because he was not going to be able to be around any much longer. Because he was making a sacrifice on behalf of a whole community. He's about to make a sacrifice on top of a whole entire community. I apologize. I guess our signal's not doing too well on YouTube. I keep saying the chat is disconnected, then it's coming back, going away, coming back. So if I miss you on YouTube, please forgive me. Right, as far as your comments. But thank you guys for being on. Appreciate you. So, we're not realizing this. Yeah, you said people these days take the Most High for a joke. Yeah, not knowing that they're cursing themselves. How you doing, Sandra? Right, but we're not aware of how this really works, and we're not even thinking about it. Like, we might even be aware of it, but we don't think about how relevant that is. Right, like we don't think about how relevant that is. What does the altar look like? It's been altered. First things first, you got to make sure that these leaders have clean hands. Next thing up, after the leader has clean hands, what does it say after that? You got to make sure they have clean hands, and then they have to make sure that they inspect the sacrifice to make sure that it is clean. Not only do they have to wash what's being sacrificed, so that what you're sacrificing has to be clean, but also you have to make sure that what's washed, as far as the sacrifice is considered, you also have to make sure that the sacrifice in and of itself, once again, is clean, right? So it can't have blemishes. You can't bring a sacrifice to the altar and it has cancer. It's not clean. You cannot bring a sacrifice to the altar and it's it has it's sick at the moment. It'll mess up what's going to the altar. The altar itself is supposed to be made clean. The altar is going to end up watch this. You got to realize the altar, even the tabernacle, there's instructions of even the sacrifice. They would put blood on certain parts of the sacrifice and on the horns of the olive and on different things like that. They would make sure that certain things were done in accordance. But after all that was finished, you had to make sure it was clean. Because this thing was being made dirty. This thing that was clean is being made dirty on your behalf. The altar that's supposed to be clean until sacrifice time is being made dirty on your behalf. The tav, right, that would bear the sacrifice of Yahshua HaMashiach, it was clean, being made dirty on your behalf. You're going to have to carry your own cross, your own altar, where you become a living sacrifice. Is it dirty or is it clean? You said, what is salvation? Salvation, the word, first of all, the word salvation is pretty simple. I don't even have to go. Before we go to, John 3, just look at the word salvation. Tion means the noun. It's a person, place, or thing. So what's happening with the rest of the word? Salvage. A person that needs to be salvaged, a thing that needs to be salvaged, a place that needs to be salvaged. So if I'm working out my own salvation, it means that I'm trying to get back to my original intent. And if we want to really look at the necessity of that, I would actually say focus on Romans chapter 10, verse 9, which everybody stops at, which actually talks about the word confession. The word confession in the Greek is homologio, which means the homo have the same logio, logic. So you have to have the same logic of what Paul's talking about up to that point, and what therefore Yahshua HaMashiach is talking about. But then verse 10, right after it, tells you that you're still on your way to righteousness. That means being in right lawful standing. And on your way to salvation, that means on your way to being salvaged, but back to your original intent. So you still have not arrived yet, and we should be working at our own salvation with fear and trembling based off of the mindset of Yahushua. And if we want to go back to Romans chapter 10, verses 1 through and get to verse 9, well, verse 1 says, it's still my prayer that Israel will be saved. Verse 2, but Israel has a zeal for Elohim, it's not according to knowledge. Verse 3, therefore we got into everybody else's culture and stuff and started mixing and matching. Verse 4, therefore we're not going towards the end or the direction that we're supposed to be headed in. But verse 5, Moses still needs to be applied to this thing. Verse 6 and 7, I'm not trying to tell you I have a heaven to hell to put you in. Verse 8, though, we still need to get back on track. So verse 9, if that's what you're confessing, then you'll be able to believe that you can be raised from the dead just as he was raised from the dead because you're a fellow heir. Verse 10, therefore you'll be able to start working towards righteousness and working towards salvation. Verses 11 and 12, that's why even if you are not all 100% Israel, because even Romans 9:6 says that now Israel is Israel. Verse 13 through 16 is mandatory. Anyone who calls upon the authority, the Sham, the name of the Most High, they shall be saved. But how can one be saved if they do not believe this? And how can one believe what they have not heard? And how can one hear what is not being preached? And how can one preach if they have not been sent by the Most High? For how beautiful are the feet of those who are followers of the way, or those who step in the way or walk in his ways. Therefore, verse 16, he quotes Isaiah 43, verse 1, concerning what you're talking about. Who shall believe our report? Right? So salvation is not something I have to argue about. I'm salvaging, or Yah is salvaging, but it says work out your own salvation. So I'm supposed to work out certain things according to a cultural belief that is kingdom oriented, that's supposed to get me back to something that was lost by Adam and Eve, to ensure that I can get back on track with what was promised before all this stuff about us arguing over what a word means. But if I'm going to make the sacrifices necessary for it, then my altar that we're talking about, the things that have been altered concerning salvation, need to go away, and we should go back to the original intent. That's what salvaging something is. How you doing, Marley? And many people have not salvaged or gone through a salvage process, have never been in their original intent, or even looked at the word of Yah and how it was originally intended to use. Therefore, once again, how can we have a proper sacrifice built upon that? How can you make a proper sacrifice? How can you give a proper sacrifice? How can you sacrifice properly for your children? And that's not even mandatory for what you're doing, for how you're living. For many, it's not even mandatory. And since it is not mandatory, right, why would you live in a mandatory fashion? If the people of Yah believe that this mindset was mandatory, and then why would we not let this mind be in us? It also was in Yahshua HaMashiach, who was in the form of Elohim and found it not robbery, but still said, you know what I'll do? I find it not robbery, but you know what I'll do? I'll still come down and sacrifice myself and show him how it's done. How you doing, Iska? Right? His sacrifice was built upon a proper altar. It was not altered by human hands. His altar must remain unaltered. See, so even when we're talking about the sacrifice, right? We're going to talk about salvation, as far as, because even when we're talking about salvation, it's not even really what we're talking about, really, because if we're talking about John 3, or we're talking about John 3:16, or John 3:14, 15, and 16, or John 3:14 through 17, or John chapter 3, the whole thing. Because even that talks about something that happened when people broke the law. Not coming at you, hopefully you're not taking it like I'm coming only at you. I'm just trying to show you, right? Like, this is altered mindset if we're not careful. People broke the law. This is what it's talking about. People don't miss. John 3. This is what happens, right? John 3, this is when Nicodemus comes under the cloak of night, and is trying to sneak in there. And he's like, yo, Joshua, man, you the man. You got it going on. You the man. Like, nobody can do what you do. You got to be sent from heaven, bro. You can't be out here doing these miracles and teaching the way you're teaching, and you're not even connected to the Most High. That's how you talking, right? You the man. You got it going on. And Yahshua is rude. You would consider him to be rude. I would consider him to be truthful. But Yahshua says, ho. Look, no offense to you, Nicodemus. He didn't even say no offense. He just like, Nicodemus, real talk. I appreciate everything you're saying, bro. However, we can't really talk any further unless you've been born again. Nicodemus, like, word? Like, I'm going to give you all this rap, and you just going to stop? Okay, well, first of all, and then secondly, wait a minute, be born again? So what you talking about? I'm supposed to go back in my mother's womb and then come out again? And then, like, how do that even work? And he says, man, you're supposed to be a teacher in all Israel. You don't know what's going on, what I'm saying? He said, like, yeah, you're going to have to get yourself in order and get cleaned up again. And then he gives a reference point. Before we get to John 3:16, he gives a reference point earlier. He says, the same way that Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And if I be lifted up, I will draw all men. Now, what was he saying there? Now you got to go back to what we think is Old Testament. But you got to go back to the Testament. It didn't stop being part of the Testament because somebody wrote Old and New in front of it. So now you got to go back to the Testament. So what do you got to go back to? Right? He said, this is what happened. He said, okay, go back, and this is what's going on. right? We have to go back now to our story, not his story, but our story, not to what we want, but what he wants, not to our will, but his will. What is he saying there? He says, go back to when Moses was holding up the serpent. Why did Moses have to hold up the serpent? He had to hold up the serpent because the children of Yashda'al were disobedient to the word of Yah. They were disobedient to the law. They had gotten out of pocket. They were not doing what they were supposed to do. They were disobedient. And so Yah had allowed the snakes in the area to start coming around them. And as the snakes in the area began to come around them, Yah began to forgive me. Yah began to, I got this bee or hornet, whatever this is, huge thing. I think it's trying to build a nest right next to it. I'm trying to make sure I'm giving it its space. Praise Yah. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So Yah is trying basically as the serpents are coming out of the ground as a punishment, poisonous serpents that are biting them and offing these people, or they're having extreme pain. And so Moses goes on behalf of the people. He goes on behalf of his people, these stiff-necked people, and he stands the gap between, and he says, hey, take my life. He's talking about, hey, I'll be a sacrifice. Allow me to pass away for them. Allow me to deal with the issues. That was his heart. Allow me to go through. How you doing, humble stepper? Allow me to be in a position. Allow me to have to go through those things. Don't let this happen to your people. That's what's going on there. And then what does the Most High say? He says, okay, fine. The same thing that is causing them pain, I want you to go ahead. See, what they had done before is they had built a fake olive, a golden calf. And I'm supposed to be Olive. I am Olive Atav. I'm the first and the last. I am the Olive, the ox, the father, strong enough for everybody, and also the Tav, the one who's going to be put on the cross. He says they built a fake one and celebrated it when you were gone on the mountain for too long. So he says, since they couldn't deal with you being gone for too long or whatever, he says, this is what we're going to do. He says, I want you to go ahead, right? He says, this is what we're going to do. I want you to go ahead, and I want you to be a sacrifice for them. He says, I want you to go ahead, and I want you to be a sacrifice for them. I'm sorry, I got this thing. I might have to move. I think they're building their hornet's nest or whatever right here. They were nice yesterday. They're kind of getting a little mean right now. Anyways, I might move a couple steps over. Praise y'all. But anyways, y'all pray for me. I don't like hornets and stuff. But anyways, where am I at? So yeah, and it's interesting we're talking about that right when we're talking about these serpents. Right? But he says, so I need you to build something that's the same thing that they built. See, they built something out of gold. And now what's attacking them is something out of the world that's not in their control. They thought that they could build something that would attack, right? Or attack this and do this or whatever. Or they thought that they could take something that was of nature and worship it instead of worship me. And so now I'm allowing these things that they think that they could worship to show those things that you worship will end up biting you and taking you out. So what does he say? He says, look, go ahead and build for me and put up high the same thing that's offing them now, that's hurting them, that's poisonous to them now. I want you to take it and I want you to put it on a stick. I want you to put it where they can all see it. And the very thing that's sucking the life out of them will now become a vessel that they can look up to, right? He's talking about himself. He's talking about how you got to salvage it. The original intent of the serpent was not that it would talk to you. The original intent of the serpent was not that it would cause you to get out of pocket with Yah. The original intent of the serpent was not that it would cause you to always be poisoned. The original intent of the serpent was for it to be in its nature. And once it got out of its nature, it got out of its original intent. And so now you were trying to worship the serpent, or you trying to put the serpent in a place that doesn't belong. And now the serpent is tearing your life up. He says, build a golden version. Gold being something that's going to be in heaven. Gold being something that's on the effort. Gold being something that must be tempted and tried and made pure. And so, by the way, that also means that this would have taken some time. He would have had to create this or found somebody who could smelt the gold and do all the stuff correctly to ensure that this stuff was going to be put in line properly. Right? So now here he is having to take time out, watching people go through all this or whatever, but he takes time out to go through and then therefore hold something up so that he can be a sign, right, of things to come, to where Moses now is able to hold up the very thing that we said we didn't need anymore, and now it's causing us to lose our lives and lose our identity and lose our relationship with Yah. Now he's holding up the very thing that was offing us, and he's putting us back to our original intent. He has therefore salvaged our relationship with Yah by salvaging our mindset concerning the serpent, concerning nature, that we don't put nature before Yah, that Yah, he will salvage what nature is. He will tell you its original intent. And now that you can look at it correctly, it no longer is offing you. Then after he says that, so the same way that Moses raises up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And if I be lifted up, I will draw all men, just like I will draw all the poison out of what you're going through. I'll be the one to also draw all men. I'm going to be the one to cure this. I'm going to be the one to make this better. I'm going to be the one to make this righteous. I will do the drawing. I will draw all men. Right? That's what he's talking about. I will do the drawing. Allow me to draw the poison out while drawing all men. And then he says, John 3:16, for Allahum so achaba arat, or he so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish, right? By the thing that they were trying to do by human hands, right? The thing they were trying to make by human hands and alter by human hands, but they would have eternal life. They could look at the same situation, right? They could look at the same situation that others look at, and they would be saved. Salah, right? They can look at the same situation that others look at, but they would be saved. Right? And we're not thinking about it that way because we're not looking at it culturally. But that's what he's talking about there. That's what he's talking about. If we look at it properly, that's the conversation that's being had. So the same way that Moses had to lift up the serpent in the wilderness, right? The same way he had to lift up the serpent in the wilderness. The same way he had to lift up the serpent in the wilderness is the same way that he has to, is the same way we're supposed to lift up Yahshua. Now, obviously, he's talking about his death that is to come, but that's how we're supposed to look at it. The same manner, the same way. How you doing, Shirls? So even when we bring that up, we're not looking at the right altar. We're looking at it in the altered state. He's saying that what Moses had to do is what we have to do. But you even see this. Matter of fact, can we be honest? How many of us have seen this conversation? I don't know if you've been part of it, but how many of you have seen this conversation, have heard of this conversation? Well, you know that the devil and God are the same person. All right, be safe, Sister Helen. How you doing? Read it. You know that the devil and God are the same person. You seen that conversation that's been floating around really a lot more over and over again, especially the last 5 years or so, I'd say, especially the last couple of years, where people are out there trying to tell you that the devil and Jesus are the same, or that Baal and God are the same, and all this. This is something that's really been picking up steam, and people don't even look at the culture of it. They're not even recognizing what's going on. But this is something that we're being told about, that people are going to look at the serpent and not realize that there's a serpent, right, that talked to Eve. There's also a serpent that in its nature is wise, right? Even in our culture, the ninth character called Tet. Some people call it Chet, but for us, we call it Tet. Or actually, I'm sorry, no. People call Het Chet, excuse me. Tet, though the ninth character, Tet, which means snake basket, which also means wisdom. So we know that snakes carry wisdom, but then there's also, right, a serpent that should be lifted up. And so some people will confuse that just because there's a fallen serpent and there's a heavenly serpent, one that's been raised up, they'll confuse the two for the same if we're not careful, because your culture is bad, right? You're having a bad cultural context concerning the serpent. You're missing the point. How you doing, Rocklock? You're missing what Yah's trying to tell you because you're confusing the serpent. There's a serpent that's poisonous that drains you, but there's also the serpent that Moses fashioned after the specific instructions of Yahweh. Right? There's also a serpent that Yah said make the serpent exactly like this, and he made a serpent based off of what Yah wanted. Right? And so there's the serpent that will try to poison you and take you out. There's a serpent that Yah wants you to lift up. One draws the poison out and will draw all men. The other one is there to cause you pain or to outright take your life. You can say one is authentic, one is counterfeit. Both, by the way, are allowed by Elohim. Both are wise. I know you think the devil is stupid. Now, I wouldn't say it's wise to go against the Most High, but he is wise in many different ways, which is why it's easy for him to trick many people. You have to figure out if you want to look for the one that poisons or if you want to look up to the one, right? Like you've been dealing with some stuff that you consider to be wise, that you consider to be a serpent. You've been sacrificing to some things that you consider to be wise to sacrifice to. You consider to be serpents, right? But just because it's serpents and it's some wisdom in there, it doesn't mean it is Yah's wisdom. Just because they say come to the altar doesn't mean it is Yah's altar. What are we talking about today? Prepare the altar. Prepare the altar, my brother. Prepare the altar, sister. Prepare the altar, mother. Prepare the altar, father. There are children who are coming up and they are looking at some stuff that is extremely lascivious and lustful, and you better be prepared to make sure that you prepare the altar. There's some things that your children don't need to take on. There's some teachings that your children don't need to have. There's some things in school that your children don't need to learn. There's some shows that you don't need to watch. There's some shows that you are totally nostalgic about that your baby should never see and definitely shouldn't see without you. There's some family members that they don't need to hang around. They need to be aware that they exist, but they don't need to hang around them. Thank you for the love, appreciate it. Right? Prepare the altar. Prepare it now. Do not wait until it is too late. How you doing, D. Walton? Do not wait until it's too late. You need to prepare this altar, and you need to prepare it right now. I'm trying to help you. Your sacrifice could not be sweet smelling to the Most High if your altar is always jacked up. And forgive me, I keep a lighter all around because I can't stand IPs. I've had this IP hanging here for a little while now. I don't cut these, I burn them. If you cut them or yank on them too much, you start yanking all the material out. So, but you gotta realize that you have an altar, right? That's been altered. Yeah, prepared for the time is at hand. Isn't that what Yehoshua kept saying over and over again? By the way, this is what excuse me. That's what Yohanan or John the Baptist was saying constantly, consistently before Yehoshua came. Right? He kept saying, "Prepare, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." That means it's coming. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming and coming. Yehoshua finally shows up and he reads and he says, "I've come." He quotes Isaiah and he starts talking about how he's going to come and he's going to, heal the brokenhearted. He's going to. All right, sorry. He says he's going to give sight to the blind. He's going to allow the dumb to speak. He's going to make sure that the lame can walk, heals the sick, all these things or whatever. And then he says, "What you just heard me read has now come." People kept saying the kingdom's coming, the kingdom's coming. Now for them, the kingdom are here. It's coming. Now all of a sudden, wait a minute, it's at hand, it's here, it's in my hand, it's staring me in the face. Yeah, it's staring you in the face. What are you going to do with it now? Today is prepare the altar. The word pair, by the way, right? The PARE is not PAIR. So this is not make two, not be divided. Pair means to cut. You're going to have to cut some things so that you don't have division within your own house. See, if it was prepare, PAIR, that would mean that you need to keep dividing. But see, to cut means I'm whittling down whatever I want to be one. It's a different mindset. You can say, well, if I prepare something, then I'm cutting things into two anyways. But if I pair something up, I'm saying there's two halves of something that go together. There's some things you're going to have to cut off so that they are always gone. Before your sacrifice, there's some things that need to go. How you doing, Pinky? Before your sacrifice, there's some things about yourself that need to be relinquished. There's some old habits that you have that don't get to be habits anymore. There's just some things that they do not get to be habits anymore. I'm sorry. Not sorry. I feel for you. How about that? I'm empathetic with the plight of, I've been doing this for 35 years and you mean I don't get to do this anymore? Yeah, that's how it works. And here's the wild part is that you won't do it to prepare the altar for the sacrifice, but you'll do it for everybody else. I don't need to listen to nobody. I don't need to listen to no man. I don't need to listen to no woman. I don't need to listen to no, but I think it was Minister Sharon said this on Friday. But here you are. And I think Minister Joseph, it was either Minister Joseph or Minister Sharon, or maybe both of them said it. I think it was Minister Joseph said it. Matter of fact, he might have said it during the men's meeting. I don't know. We had so much stuff going on, it's hard for me to keep up. He said, though, yeah, I think it was Minister Joseph I'm thinking about in particular, because he was talking about how, isn't that interesting, by the way, in your mind, you see the husband and wife working together, so you can't even sometimes separate the two. Praise y'all. I just caught that. Anyway, that might have been for me. Anyway, Minister Joseph was saying to us, it is always interesting how you'll say, and I'm not going to give too much stuff away from the men's meeting, but, you know, men will say, I don't need to listen to this. I don't need to listen to this. I don't need no man tell me this, blah, blah. But your boss tell you to be on time. You'll be on time, won't you? You know, you say you ain't listening to this. Let somebody say that let the IRS come knocking on your door. You ready to do whatever they say? Let the police officer stop you when you're ready to go ahead and say, yes, sir, officer. Yes, sir. Okay. Even if it's because you don't want something to happen or because your children in the car or whatever, you're going to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. How you doing? Be real. How you doing, Dre? Right? You're going to do exactly what somebody tells you to do. But here comes the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And he says, I need you to prepare the altar. And you got every excuse not to prepare it. Here come little old me. I'm just a vessel. And you say, I'm not going to listen to him. He's just a man. And I've listened to pastors before, yada, yada. Okay, granted, sure. There are false preachers. And I was somebody that needed to get myself, even if I wouldn't consider myself a false preacher, I definitely had some things I got to get better in my life for sure. However, when your teacher said, do this or you're not going to get an A, did you do it? Matter of fact, there's some people that have been police officers. And you can say that they didn't want to do this or that or whatever, but they did it anyways. Why? Because they're not going to be the one that didn't do it. They got to be all right in their system. When they go back into the job, they got to be quiet, or else, you know, hey, if they tell on somebody or whatever, somebody might get them. And one of the police officers who got jurisdiction and some stuff like that, they might have some stuff pop up on their record all of a sudden. Thank you, Sister Monica. We know you do. Appreciate you. Right? I'm just saying, you better be careful. I'd have to double check. Somebody saying there's a new moon. I don't know. I had to double check my calendar. I didn't think there was one, but I had to see. Right? But see, you'll stand under this, that, whatever. Excuse me. Yeah, next year, when we go into next year, I've been doing some research. When we go into next year, we're going to double check which calendar we're using and stuff like that, because there's been a lot of stuff. I still feel like we're using the right one, but we might have to do some specific teaching just on that. It's kind of very mundane. I don't know how many people would actually even follow what we're saying, in all honesty, but not just because it's boring, but because you got to know a lot about it or whatever, and even see what does it have to do with certain things. But I've been doing a lot of research on it, because there's a whole bunch of there are a whole lot of different arguments on that stuff. Yeah, it's a new moon. Yeah, according to what people call a new moon, because new moon doesn't necessarily mean what people think it means. Some people are arguing that the new moon is actually like, you know, it starts with nothing. Some people think a new moon's a full moon. Some people think a new moon is half moon or whatever. So, like I said, but anyway, and a lot of it comes from a Jewish standpoint and not an Israelite standpoint. So, but anyways, whichever your value or your mindset is on that or whatever, you know, feel free to go ahead and follow whatever you deem is acceptable. I'm not going to argue that or worry about that today, and I don't even have the time really to go into it today. In all honesty, it is what it is. We even have a calendar that we go by, that we have people that have it on their walls and stuff like that we use together. So if the new moon is now tonight, and that's what we're going off of, whatever somebody's saying, by all means, feel free to go by that. Okay, amen. But here we do at the end of the day, right? this is something that a lot of stuff has been so altered that it's like when, for example, even if we were, I'm not going to go down the route of the new moon per se, but let me just even do like somebody will say, well, why do you guys say Yeshua? Why do you guys say Yahweh? Why do you guys say Yahweh? Why do you guys say Yahashua? Why do you guys say Yahuwah or Yahushua, excuse me, etc. Right? Why do you say Yahuwah? Why do you say Yahweh? 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 You know, why did some people say Ahaya, which is not even a title? It's actually somebody being playful with I am that I am, and thinking that that supersedes in verse 15 of Exodus chapter 3. What said it? I'm sorry, Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, where they get that from, and actually not listening to the rest of it that tells you what he's supposed to be. And Exodus chapter 3, verse 15, right? There's a lot of stuff in there where it's like we have altered so much stuff. Now we're arguing dialects, which a lot of dialects means it's not even the origin. So we, like there can be dialect of language, there can be dialect of writing, there can be dialect of words. And so even the oo sound is not an original Avda or Hebrew sound. However, people use the oo sound because they learned a lot of their Hebrew from the Greek or from modern Hebrew, which is affected by the Greco-Roman mentality, because the people, especially when you talk about Khazarian, but even Ashkenazi, right, you're dealing with what? You're dealing with a very Greco-Roman mentality. So I'll have a lot of people that will even say, and once again, study to show yourself approved. Don't just believe what I'm saying because I say it, right? Hang with what you got, do what y'all's telling you to do, be obedient to Ravak Hakodash, let her lead you and all that. Hear what I'm saying. I'll have a lot of people over there here teaching that I'm saying. I'm not saying anybody in particular on here. I'm just using this as an example. We're flowing a little bit, right? And so I'll have somebody say, I can't find some of the stuff that you're saying, and some of the stuff they're saying, you're the only person that pops up. I'll go and then I'll do some research and I'll show them I'm not the only person saying it, but I can see why a lot of people go, well, there's not a majority using it. But I've learned that just because there's not a majority using something doesn't mean that it's false, right? And if it's something that's supposed to be hidden, it's something that we got to start realizing there's a lot of stuff that we're not necessarily using correctly, right? So there's a lot of stuff that we've been taught, and it's not even and like I said, even on the stuff with the new moon and all that, I'm doing research because I want to make sure, next year when we start going through this again and giving out calendars and giving out dates, that we're all on one accord and stuff like that as much as possible, and we're doing things according to the word as much as possible. And then there's people who kind of change stuff up or look at this. So there's a lot of stuff that's there. And may I be honest, unfortunately, we're in a position where some of the stuff we might not know at least for another 100, 200 years, or might not know until Yah comes back, because some of it's been so altered, right? So that's why I'll never get in extreme arguments with anybody about it, because it's very difficult to kind of keep the things unaltered that have been altered so much, right? We have to go back to a point. That's why I keep saying live the culture, because the culture, us living it, will ultimately start to verify certain things. Like one of the things that was an aha moment for me years ago was when I realized that, oh yeah, like it's really easy to find out, biblically speaking, when Yahashua was born, right? People have been sacrificing all this stuff to make Christmas happen. And when you realize when Passover is, and you realize that Yahashua was 33 and a half years old, and you realize that it can't be a rabbi until he's 30, which means that when he was baptized and then went into the wilderness to become a rabbi, and therefore be called rabbi from that point on, right? That meant that he was 30 years old when he got baptized. You do the math, right? 3.5 years, right? After he passes is when? 3.5 years, I'm sorry, after that happens is what? He'd be 33 and a half, 3.5 years after that happens, 30th born day, he has to be basically, around that time he has to be baptized. He becomes a rabbi. 3.5 years later, right, he passes. So and that would be what? The night of, really the day of, because our days start at 6 p.m., right? Or, sundown. So at sundown is when Passover happens. They have Passover that night, and then he doesn't make it through the whole day of Passover, the 24-hour period, or really back then they would have called it 12 hours, but for us, the 24-hour period, he doesn't make it past 24 hours the next day. Matter of fact, some would argue he didn't make it past 12 hours the next day, right? Not just in their timeline, literally using our timeline, he didn't make it past 12 60-hour period or 60-minute periods during that day. So he didn't make it outside of Passover. So if I do simple math, and I know that means that he was 33 and a half years old. He was around 3.5 years. He was baptized around his born day, right? Then that means that If I add another half a year, 6 months to where Passover is, then he can't be born anywhere close to Christmas, right? The culture, right, begins to dictate. So the things I'm sacrificing for are built upon the unaltered culture. Now I get to a place where a lot of this stuff actually becomes easy to find out. I don't have to argue certain things anymore because it's easy to just do the math. Oh, okay. And then if you look at scripture, you'll discover that it gives you priest names around the time when all this stuff is happening, as far as John the Baptist and Yahashua and all this stuff in the pregnancy. So if I look at the priest names around the time, and I know that certain names of individuals, certain groups were supposed to be the ones that did certain, follow certain protocol concerning the temple, and were charged with certain things, especially around the Day of Atonement, because that's when Yahashua would have been born, around the Day of Atonement, and I matched that up too. Well, then it's pretty easy for me to see. So that's why I said, even culturally, when I have the right unaltered thing that I'm putting my sacrifices on top of, it's a lot easier to have that conversation. How you doing, Yahashua? Right. And if Minister Bertram's on, if I didn't catch you earlier, how you doing? All right. And Sister Jessica as well. These are things that I catch because I'm in the culture, right? We live so much outside of culture that so many things get altered. And when your culture is altered, then everything becomes altered, right? You say hip hop culture. No, so he would have been, well, if we make usually around somewhere around April 1st is going to be when Passover is, right? Not talking about Easter. Easter kind of dances all over the place. Easter is about Ishtar, right? But if we pass over, let's just make April 1st around the time, even though usually it'll be like in the beginning of April, but let's just say April 1st. Well, then you get to 6 months after that, you're talking about around October 1st. So could it be September sometimes, late September, could it be early October, depending on when our calendar is and where the position of the moon is and all that. Yes, somewhere around then, but it's nowhere close to the winter solstice, right? But it's nowhere close to the winter solstice, right? It's nowhere close to December 24th. It's nowhere close to Saturnalia. It's nowhere close to what we're not supposed to do in Jeremiah chapter 10, verses 1-5, and making idols out of Christmas trees to appease Odin and those that fly around and all that now become your Santa Claus, and they match the iron with clay, so to speak. Right? But this is because what I'm sacrificing upon is not altered. Remember, the altar is not supposed to be is supposed to be not supposed to be created, or it's not supposed, those things that are being used as the resources to make the altar should never be altered themselves. Those things that we should sacrifice upon are supposed to be unaltered. That's the problem, is that so many things have been altered. Right? That's the problem. So many things have been altered. Right? If your faith is built upon an altered foundation, why would you not think your faith would be altered? This is why it's so easy for marriages not to exist anymore. So easy. It's really easy for a marriage to just lose. You lose a marriage like that. Really easy. Like that. Marriage gone. Why? Because you have altered expectations. You have a dating mentality, so you started dating and not making sure that you're doing things according to the will of Yah. You're not taught what it is to be a husband. You're not taught what it is to be a wife. Right? Hey, how you doing, Chef? You're not taught what it is to have a proper mindset. So these things have become altered. And when you have an altered reality that you're sacrificing upon, you yourself will be altered. Your people, your nation will be altered. How you doing, Shabbos? Your heart will be altered. All women are women, altered. So now churches are coming together and asking people to forgive them for saying that there's a such thing as Yah's will concerning male and female. You're gonna get an altered word. Be ready. Be ready. I still don't judge them. I still don't say I have a heaven and hell to put them inside of. That's not the point of this exercise. I'm just trying to tell you that when you alter what Yah's given, be ready for altered reality. Am I freezing up on TikTok? Am I all right on YouTube? Well, actually, YouTube. I know you guys can't put anything in the chat. Sorry. I don't know if that's fixed itself or not. Doesn't look like it did. But can you guys see me on TikTok? All right. Can you hear me? Am I freezing? Am I pausing? Fine. All right. Okay. So when something's altered long enough, right? They altered. See, watch this. They altered. We talk about this often too. They altered how you give birth as women. So you think the natural way to give birth, the natural way to go to your OBGYN, all that stuff, the natural way to have somebody open your vaginal cavity and all that stuff is to be on your back and have your spine curve and have the weight on your back. We altered that. We messed you up. You given the sacrifice of giving birth, and we said it was okay to stick a needle in you, allowing fluid to leak all over you, and drugging you and drugging your child before the child is even born. How you doing, Great Witch? Thanks for being on. Yeah, there's a lot of sisters who have back problems. We altered the stuff where we said you should wear high heel shoes. High heel shoes were made for little boys that were SA'd by Greek men, and they were brought back in style by a French king. High heel shoes weren't even for you. So the whole idea of a high heel shoe being attractive was to try and appeal to the person who likes the little boy. It's perverted. And so a lot of women now have problems with their ovaries and stuff. And then they say, right, and they don't even realize it's because you weren't designed to have yourself tilted like that. Matter of fact, the stuff as far as your ovaries or your womb even shifting back and forth is supposed to be something that's more so that comes out of, if I can just be frank with you, sexual activity. And that helps with you, having an orgasm. You're not supposed to walk around all day like that. You're putting stress on something that's not supposed to be stressed all day. But once again, all I got to do is alter it, and you'll make sacrifices. Maybe you'll even make unknowing sacrifices, because a lot of you don't even know that. You weren't even aware of that until you heard it. But yeah, do some research. High heel shoes are not made just like bras. And I'm not saying women should be going out there and just making sure all this stuff is showing, especially because men are very perverted and we're hypersexualized, and so it's going to be very difficult for you. But I mean, I guess there's enough sisters doing it nowadays where maybe it wouldn't matter anyway. But hear what I'm saying? The bra was not made by you; it was made by a man. And it was not made to help you. It was made to conceal. But then they started saying, oh, yeah, it helps the women and stuff like that. Do some research, though, right? Especially, the breast actually sag more usually when women wear bras. And if we be honest about it, like this whole thing of, oh, a woman's breast might droop, that happens naturally when she gets older anyways. But also the same thing as far as that, like, if you have children, that's just part of what happens. And if there's a man that can't handle that or whatever, then he's not mature. Like, oh, see, this is something that once again has been altered. Do you not even think about how much? I don't know. Okay, Holy Spirit, Amen. This is one of those things where we should talk about it, but even I, as much as we talk about marriage and stuff like that on here, even I maybe blush is the wrong word, but even I kind of am a little hesitant to talk about this stuff, and a little shy to talk about some of this stuff because people don't think about it, and people will think that you're, because they don't think for some reason the Bible indicates that we should talk about sexuality. But let's just keep it about a lot of stuff that you're attracted to is immature. I'm gonna say that again. A lot of stuff that you're attracted to is immature. Watch this. If you're, I'm gonna be careful how I say this because I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm 40 years old. Okay. At age 40, if I see a woman, I'm gonna just be honest with you. If I see a woman, and I know that if you take care of your body, you can get different results and all that. You know what I'm saying? But if I see a woman that's giving birth to 8 children and her breasts are sitting up really, really high and something like that, something is off to me. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's, especially she's breastfeeding, that's not, something doesn't make sense, right? Somebody who has the breast of a 20-year-old is probably a 20-year-old. I'm 40 years old. Now I'm married already, so I wouldn't look for it anyways like this. I already have the greatest wife to ever live. Hear what I'm saying though. At 40, I'm not attracted to the 20-year-old breast because I know that the 20-year-old bosom comes with a 20-year-old mind. Right? Can I just say it like that? Is that not harmful to anybody for me to say it in that regard? Right? I'm trying to be very nice about it. You know, I could, there's a way I could say it to where it might hurt some people's feelings, and people might be thinking that I'm trying to make fun of their relationships or whatever. I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you that my mindset is different. Right? Matter of fact, can I be honest? At 20, I wasn't really attracted to the 20-year-old mind, because the 20-year-old mind that we think that everybody's supposed to have is a common mind. I want a kingdom mind. And so the one who has a queendom mind, she doesn't act like the typical 20-year-old. So at 20, I wouldn't have been looking for the 20-year-old mind. Okay, sure. So like I said, if you want to talk about fitness, this and that or whatever, like I'm saying, if there's a woman who's 40 years old, has had 8 children, and she's breastfed them, there will probably be naturally a little more droopage or sagging, and that wouldn't be something that would, I would look at and be like, she's not attractive, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that she couldn't have 8 children and have breasts that look like they're 20. I would just say that that would be not the norm. You know what I'm saying? I would just tell you that's not the norm for sure. It doesn't mean she doesn't deserve to be loved because it's not the norm, but I would say that definitely is not the norm as far as nature. And Yah did not create her breasts to be like that forever. Yah created her breasts to make sure that they could take care of others. And so if she's taking care of your children, for a lot of mature men, and she takes care of children by being a sacrifice, by allowing her body to go through something so that her children would have the best chance at life, that's sexy. That's my point, right? So if your wife, like there's people, and people do this all the time, and I'm not talking to everybody. If the shoe fits, wear it, great, right? If the shoe doesn't fit, take it off, don't wear it, great. There's some things like ageism and things, sure, right? Natural changes in people's bodies. There's some things like ageism. Thank you for the compliment, appreciate it. There's some things like ageism, and it's immature to get with somebody and think that, yeah, like they're going to stay looking like that forever, or that's the only thing we're looking for. Look, there's 70-year-old men out there now. We don't tell the truth about they be on steroids and take some other things like that, like it's not really natural, right? Or they take different type of blockers, different things, excuse me, different things like that. But yeah, there's some 70-year-old men out there that are more ripped than 25-year-olds that are athletic. Yeah, right. But is that what you're looking for from a 70-year-old man? If that's all he's doing, especially that black, forgive me. I'm gonna just, forgive me. I'm not trying to out people or whatever. It is what it is. And look, he could look at me and say everything I'm wrong. I'm talking about something culturally, right? I'm not looking for a 70-year-old man that's doing whatever little dance he be trying to do to be doing poorly. He be doing all the time, right? And got the little babies around and stuff like that, with girls and stuff like that, but be trying to have sex with all these different women anyway, so he's not faithful to the one that he got. I'm just like, if that's the mindset that you're looking for from a 70-year-old man, I don't see what you're doing. I don't know if y'all know who I'm talking about, right? But I'm just trying to tell you, right? Now he could be, if you want to say he's wise, I'm just saying when I listen to him, he sounds like he's 25. He sounds like he's in high school, for real. But he's 70. But it don't mean that he's 70 years old in his mind. That's all I'm saying, right? I mean, you can be, just because I'm 40 doesn't mean I'm wiser than anybody else. It doesn't mean that I'm less wiser than anybody else, right? Wisdom doesn't have to be only equated to how old you are in years. But what I'm saying is, in our culture, in our community, shouldn't there be something to where we should start teaching something in line enough? We should have something that's unaltered enough to where we start expecting. See, this is one of the reasons why even if you should date, that's not in your Bible to date, but even if you should date, here's one of the things that makes it impossible anyways. How do you date somebody and there's nothing that you know that every 30-year-old is going to act like this? You can't. So now you got to go on all these multiple dates. Why do you go on multiple dates? Y'all are like, oh, I got to go on multiple. You can't find, I don't care what Tinder or what, I don't even know the name of these things. Tinder, whatever that people be using, and all this stuff. Grinder is LGBTQ plus, I think, or something, right? But whatever these terms are, Christian singles, Christian mingles, I don't know the names of these things. Whatever you guys use it, all this stuff that's out there, you can't even use them correctly because people put fake information on there and people don't think the same and people don't think as wisdom. There's nothing in there. See, in our culture, you should at least have the mindset of a man by the time that you're 16. You should have the mindset of a woman by the time you hit 16. You're not ready for marriage yet. You're not qualified yet, but you should have the mindset of a father or the mindset of a husband, the mindset of a wife by the time you hit 19. You're not ready yet, but you should be trained to be it. By the time you hit 22, as a male or a female, you should be ready to be a mother or father, but you're still not ready yet. You're still not ready until what? Until the community comes together and says that if he finds a wife, if he as a husband qualified finds a wife and the community agrees on it and everything as far as the parents agreeing on it, now let's come together and now let's have conversation. Sorry, I think we lost everybody on TikTok. So I'm just saying, we're gonna get ready to take our leave in a little bit, right? Matter of fact, pretty much now, so we can get ready to do one last visit and get on the road again, and then hopefully look at the land and then get on the road again and then sit down for a couple more days, sat down somewhere, then maybe do some visitation on the way back up on the East Coast. But yeah, we have not prepared the altar. We have not prepared the altar. Things have been altered so much that it's not an altar. It has to be made with things that are not carved out by human hands. We can't use idols to make sacrifices on. It's idolatry. What most people think about the woman's body is worshiping her in a form that she's not designed to stay in. May I say this again? It's immature. Watch this. Some of y'all want 40-year-old women with 13-year-old bodies. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to help you out, right? Some of you want 40-year-old women with 13-year-old bodies. Women are out here losing their lives trying to get mommy makeovers. Why would you make a mom not look like a mom? My mother, who passed away of multiple sclerosis a couple decades ago, was skinny. I don't even remember the way she looked until I was blessed with a video that showed her and had her voice on it and everything. I was able to hear and see her for the first time in a really long time because I had no memory outside of her even being sick. She had been sick for so long in my life. And yet, when I look back at it or whatever, or yet in my mind, even her being on her final and on the bed, which was her final resting place, the last time I saw her, as skinny and frail as she was, having a tube down her throat, I thought she was beautiful. You hear what I'm saying? Like when you love somebody, at some point, see, I learned maybe because that happened to me, maybe that helped develop my childhood mind and be ready for a relationship. I wasn't looking for a 13-year-old body. My mother was beautiful, even when she was frail. When she looked like she had death up on her. There's besides my wife, there's not another woman that's ever existed in my mind that comes close to the beauty of my mother. You know what I'm saying? It didn't have anything to do with her body. See, we've been over sexualized. It had nothing to do with. But I didn't want to do anything that was disgusting and abominable and lay down with my own mother. Right? That wasn't. But she was beautiful to me and still is, and can't tell me any less. Right? I show pictures of my mother, and the only ones I really have are the ones of her because she didn't like taking pictures at all. So we didn't really take pictures of her when she got sick. But I have pictures of her when she's younger, and I don't even remember her like that. And even though I think of her as being beautiful in those pictures, I'm not the person when people go, "Wow, she was really beautiful," and this and that, and blah blah. Wow, look at her before she got sick. In my mind, I'm nice about it, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't even see that as her. The mother that was in a wheelchair and couldn't really use her legs, but would try to get out of the wheelchair the couple times in life that she did after she lost her walking, so she could be there on the floor and try and tickle her little son. Like that's the beautiful mother to me. I don't I don't remember what her body shape is because it doesn't matter to me. And I know somebody's saying, well, yeah, that's your mother. Look, I get it. With my wife, I love her shape and everything like that. Hear what I'm saying though. That's when I love my wife. I love when my wife goes up there. I love the accent of her body. I love when her nails are done. I love when she's got her hair is nice and flowing in the breeze. I love when she's sitting up there and she's got that great natural glow about her. I love all of those things. I love her divine femininity. I also love when my wife lays down next to me in the bed, and I love when my wife says, "Thank you for being in my life." I love when my wife and I have certain sayings that we say in different languages that we do not say to anybody else but each other, right? Like, and so we're in our 40s now, and to be honest, nature hasn't really done all the stuff that I guess people say it's supposed to do to you yet. However, when that day comes, if that day comes, whatever, I'll still love my wife because that's not how I see her only. Like I don't put her in this box, but that's all there is to it, and that's what I'm really trying to get to. That's what I'm trying to get to is it's immature to see this woman who you're supposed to be with till death do you part, and start saying that because her body is changing, or even as men are now doing this. See, we're not talking about this. Why are men getting units? And men are getting units and gluing them to their head, and why are they literally getting plastic surgeries where they're getting fake abdomens? Some men have fake six packs, by the way, when y'all be talking about these people. That's what I was saying. It's not just stuff that they do. Some of them are working out for sure and doing stuff. Some of them getting fake six packs put in. Some of them are trying to get penis enlargement surgeries and therefore actually end up losing the whole phallus because you're not supposed to do that, right? You only got so much of that that's left inside you. You pull too much of it out, you're going to end up losing your life or losing your phallus. Seriously. Why is it that you have men that are out here trying to get, that are trying to take some of the stuff to make sure that they don't have erectile dysfunction rather than just eating correctly and taking time out to make sure the blood flows correctly. So that because that's why even if you have problems with sperm and stuff, you still have those things. You can still have an erection if you get blood flow. It's not because you can't have it's not always just because you're old. It's because you don't have blood flow issues, or you have blood flow issues rather, and you're not taking care of them, right? And so they're going out getting this stuff. They're getting tummy tucks, right? Men are getting the stomach surgery now, make the stomach smaller, right? Men are getting you're right, just like women are getting BBLs and women are getting breast surgeries. Men are getting nose surgeries and stuff too. Men are getting their chest done too. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, he had to get he was taking too much too many performance enhancing drugs, including steroids and stuff, and so he got something that they call B. Forgive my language, B tits, BITC. You know what? TITS. And men who do too much steroids, they'll get what's called B tits, and they'll have these women looking like breasts. So if you watch wrestling for a time, or go back and look for it, if you want to look it up on YouTube, there was a time where Dwayne Johnson wore a shirt. He wouldn't wrestle, and just showing his chest. He wore a shirt for a while because he's developed these things, and then but he was getting so much popularity that he would want to lose it. So even when he was recovered enough, once he got so they acted like he got hurt. He went away. He came back. and he still wasn't fully recovered, but he was recovered enough that he could take a bump or he could be hit on the ground, right? So he came back. He had to get surgery done to make sure that he didn't look too much like he was developed, where he was starting to look like a woman and not a man, right? Welcome back, Jay. Yeah, so there's a lot of people out there who are doing this stuff, and once again, it's because we don't have a reality we're based upon. We have not prepared an altar that's not taken away. Your reality is that people's bodies won't change. If anything's going to change about somebody, it's going to be their body. Amen, somebody. If anything's going to change, it's going to be your body. At some point, I'm going to have bags that droop if I'm not careful. It happens. At some point, I'm going to have, you know, skin that hangs from my neck. At some point, right? And so if you're looking for me to not love me through the changes, we'll take our leave on this point right here. If you're not willing to love me through the changes, then you're not worthy of loving me at all. If you are not willing to love me through the changes, you are not willing to love me at all. Right? So you got to be willing. See, somebody gets with you. Oh, why you get with the man? You know what? She a baddie. Look at them. Look at them hips, bro. Look at them thighs. Look at her breasts. You know, she look at that sexy sway when she walk. Look at this. Look at that. Like you got to come with something more correct. Look at him. He got good hair. What happened when he loses hair? Like I said, yeah, like we said earlier, we are very immature in what we're attracted to. He got good credit. What happens if he loses his business or his job, and he has to have bad credit for a while, or even has to go through what is it, a bankruptcy, seventh class seven or whatever it is, number seven bankruptcy, whatever that is. He has to go through that or whatever just to make sure, so he can't even own anything, and he has to always live in debt for 7 years before they finally clear up his credit. But he finally gets himself back on track. Chapter 7, thank you. Right? What if he has to do that? Can you love him past that? What if it's not his fault? Can you love him not past that? Can you love him through that? A lot of people will love you past it. Meet me on the other side. You going through all that stuff, you going through all that stuff, whatever, right? What if she ends up not loving herself? What if she goes through a period of not loving herself? What if she goes through a period of having your baby and goes through postpartum depression? Are you ready to love her through that? Not to meet her on the other side. Okay, she going through some things. I'll be nice and everything, but I'm not really gonna put no effort into doing that. Like I'll help out with the baby and everything, but I didn't really sign up for that. How many people have been in divorce, and trigger warning, because I know some of us have been, trigger warning. How many people have been married to people and all of a sudden you end up going through a physical ailment and that person is out? I know people got married to people, they had a child ended up with a physical ailment, and it was a lot. The person said, I didn't sign up for it. Out. Because we're very immature. You have an immature mindset. If you can't go through it with me, then you're not worthy of me. That's bottom line. There's gonna be a lot of people that call me a lot of names, this, that, or whatever. There's gonna be a lot of people that say I'm a false this, false preacher. There's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna not like me because I don't do this, do that, whatever. There's gonna be a lot of people in my family that don't like the fact that I got with you, whatever the case might be. Are you ready to roll with that? Right? Because I'm gonna be honest with you from the beginning. We're not gonna do the whole dating thing, and then as we slowly go on the 10th date, I'll reveal to you I got this, and on the 15th date, I'll reveal to you that I got a child, and on the 20th date, I'll reveal to you that I'm actually a freak, and on the 25th date, I'll reveal to you. I don't know. I'm not doing all that. I'm telling you straight up from the beginning, this is what it is, all right? And are you ready to love me through that? And like you said, longevity, because it's gonna be long. How long? Until one of us passes, and even past that, because we're gonna see each other in heaven again. How long? How long are you willing to suffer? That's why it's called long suffering. Suffering means it's a choice, right? Women's suffrage. You got to choose. You fought for the right to choose to vote. This is marriage suffrage. How long are you writing to? How long are you ready to fight to choose to fight for your marriage, to choose to fight for Israel, to choose to fight for your relationship, to choose to fight for your leadership, to choose, right? How long should they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? How long? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book, but not all of us. How long? Amen. And neither are you. You're not the norm either. And don't let anybody treat you like the norm. That being said, though, we're not going to do our normal shout out. I've actually been out here longer than I expected to. I'm going to go ahead, take my leave for today, get ready to get on the road, or at least do a little visit and then get on the road. Thank you all. Keep us in prayer as we continue to travel a little bit. And we look forward to seeing and talking to you guys very soon. I should be on with you guys this evening. And we might even try to do a little Patreon something or other. Let's say maybe around 6:30 or 7. So it'll be recorded on Patreon. If you guys have Patreon, you can just go on at the same time that it's going to be on live through Patreon. You might be able to catch on something like Kofi_40, the original channel, and maybe see us there as well. We'll let you know. But pray for us. We'll pray for you. Thank you guys for being on. Hopefully you got something. We're talking about prepare the altar, right? I can't do our typical shout out that we do at the end. I really got to go upstairs and get ready to go. So this is what I'll do real quick. I'm going to go ahead and put this up for you all so you can see if you'd like to contact us. I'll try to put it over my head. If you're on YouTube, you can just look in the description right now. But if you're on TikTok, I'll try to place it to where you can see it above me. If you'd like to be able to contact us, you can feel free to text us or email us at the information that's out for more information. But we appreciate you. We normally would have some music playing and stuff at this moment in time, but I just do not have the time today. So I need to be obedient to making sure that we get out of here at a specific time. But we thank you guys for being on with us and spending some time with us today. We know that you could have been doing a great deal of other things, but you chose to spend some time with us. And so we're thankful and grateful that you did. Hopefully you got something out of today. And let's continue to grow. Let's continue to prepare the altar. And we look forward to talking to you soon. So I will see you guys tonight. And thank you again for being on. We appreciate you. Hopefully you got something out of the message. Please check out my wife, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And thank you for being on. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, pastor of Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. And until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom, Kwam Yashtel, all honor and praise due to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim. Amen. Take care, family.